Hello, this is Dan Pena, and welcome to my first audio version of the Quantum Leap Advantage newsletter. Friends and subscribers, today I'm going to talk on mentors and dream teams and how important they are to a Quantum Leap Advantage methodology and the precepts that helped me turn $820 into a $400 million publicly traded, capitalized energy giant operational in South America, the United States, and in Great Britain. As we approach the end of the first half of this decade, my thoughts go to the success I've had and the failures I didn't have to suffer through. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I didn't have thousands of failures in my career. I'm only talking about the thousands more I would have had without my three mentors, Constantine Costa-Grazos, Jerry Ormond, and Jim Newman. Each helped me enormously. Their value to me and my business career cannot be overestimated. I've stated on countless occasions that Costa-Grazos was my general business mentor, Jerry Ormond was my oil business mentor, and Jim Newman was my getting my head on straight mentor. Costa passed away several years ago, but I know he still looks down upon me when I'm in the midst of battle. Mentors are extremely important because they can keep you from the avoidable mistakes. Mentors are important because to be a high-performance person, you must immerse yourself in the Quantum Leap methodology and surround yourself with people that want the same. By definition, your mentor will be that kind of person. You may be asking yourself, where do I find such mentors? You can find a mentor almost anywhere super successful people congregate. An easier and more efficient method for finding a mentor is to scan the newspapers and television. Every day of your life, the Bill Gates, the Ross Perot's of this world are being written and talked about. You are probably saying, I could never get through to those kinds of superstars, and I tell you, that's crap. Here's a short story I'd like to share with you about a Quantum Leap Advantage seminar attendee from Baldwin Park, California. Fidel Vargas wanted to own a sports franchise. He is in his middle 20s and lives in Los Angeles. He's also the youngest elected mayor in the United States, having been elected mayor of Baldwin Park at the age of 23 after finishing his undergraduate education at Harvard University. During a meeting, I suggested he call Jerry Buss, the owner of the Los Angeles Lakers, admittedly one of the most successful sports franchises in the U.S. Fidel, undaunted, made several calls before getting a call back from one of Buss's assistants. It took several weeks, but Fidel was the guest of Buss at his private box for dinner at the Forum, which is the home of the Lakers. During dinner, Fidel received tons of advice. In addition to a wealth of knowledge, Buss told Fidel it was the first time in 25 years he had ever been called upon for advice. Get it? You heard it right. You heard me correctly. Nobody had ever called him. All Fidel had to do was pick up the phone. All it took was a little guts. Fidel called someone who had been there and done that. Buss is where Fidel wants to be someday. Fidel didn't ask his brother, his uncle, or his next-door neighbor. He called information or directory assistance and asked for the phone number of one of the most successful sports franchisees of all time. And when he got them on the phone, he asked to talk to the owner. Contrary to what you've been told, it's not that hard to locate and talk to these mega high-performance people. But instead of having faith in ourselves, we listen to the conventional wisdom, which you've already heard me write about, is almost always wrong, and we don't follow our heart. We succumb to the thousands of hours of wrong preconditioning. Now, I've related this short story about Fidel Vargas. I could relate other stories, but rather than relate other stories right now, I'm going to relate how I went about getting mentors and how and what are absolutely mandatory for you to get the right kind of mentor. I'm also going to briefly touch upon mastermind groups. Although I'm a proponent of Napoleon Hill, as many of you already know, I did not use the mastermind group network method to build my successes. I did use the mentoring, but I am going to list, in my opinion, the 7 absolutely mandatory things that have to happen to get a mastermind group to work. I'm also then going to talk, not in conclusion, but in conjunction with mastermind groups and mentoring about building your dream team. And by dream team, I mean not just your mentors, but your board of directors, your financial advisors, your legal advisors, the consultants that you will use to build your company, your organization for the fulfillment of your dream. Now, I want to make a couple of general comments. Number one, I've never seen a part-time, high-performance person in 25 years of business. And number two, I've never seen a high-performance person that wasn't super enthusiastic. So a given or a foundation for completing your successful acquisition of mentors and dream teams has to be that, one, you're enthusiastic, and two, has to be that it's a full-time obsession with you. So those are the givens. And as Bob Richards, the Olympic decathlon gold medal winner from the 1948 and the 1952 Olympics, said, when there is greatness all around you, welcome it. It's easy to be great when you get around such people. And that's what the format or the basis of this whole tape is going to be. Okay, now let's talk about a mastermind group first. Again, although I didn't use it, Napoleon Hill's a great proponent of it, and this is what I've seen, the 7 most effective things that have to happen in my 25 years of experience where I've seen somebody make a mastermind group work. Number 1, the members of your group have to have a different areas of expertise. By different areas, I mean I'm a lawyer, you're an accountant, you sell used cars, everybody's doing something different. Number 2, you should have similar levels of experience. In other words, you're either all superstars or none. Not that you have one superstar and then you have all the rest as also rans. You want everybody's general level of expertise to be the same. Number 3, you have to have geographically desirable. For some of you that are young enough or that still date, you realize when you say that she or he is geographically undesirable, means they live too far away to go out with, or it costs too much money for gas, at least when I was a kid, to go pick them up and see them. You want everybody in the same area. Recently, I attended a seminar on the East Coast where some young people were talking about they were having trouble keeping their mastermind group together. One lived in Philadelphia, one lived in Boston, one lived in the D.C. area, and they wondered why very few people attended their meetings. By definition, you have to be in the same geographic area so you can get together 2 or 3 hours a week or 4 or 5 hours a month or whatever the time commitment. And number 4 is a time commitment. In other words, the time commitment has to be similar. If Bob can only spend 6 hours a week, or a month, or perhaps a week, and I can only spend 3 hours, and Doug can only spend 5 hours, we're not going to have everybody going in sync. Everybody's not going to be going down the same path. So the time commitments have to be designated and agreed upon for all members of a mastermind group. Number 5 on the list, and not necessarily number 5th because of the least importance, is no single solitary person can be a chairperson. In other words, nobody's in charge. Now, you may have somebody in charge of a certain project, but you don't have somebody in charge of the group, so to speak. Everybody's equal. Everybody's input will be considered on an equal basis. Number 6, these individuals that you're going to ask to be on your mastermind group will have had to exhibit successful traits more than your contemporaries. For example, if you're working in an office environment or in your company environment, and you already have people that are individuals that you feel exhibit the kinds of traits to deserve or warrant being on your mastermind group, these are your contemporaries. So if you're going to go outside your contemporaries, the people that you're going to pick from outside your contemporaries have to have more of the business acumen, more of the things that you're looking for a mastermind group. Otherwise, you might as well use the people you work with. And number 7, and this is where I've seen almost all mastermind groups fall apart in my experience, is that don't be embarrassed to leave when and if, or I should say if and when, the growth process stops. What happens invariably is they grow for the first few weeks or the first few months, and then it becomes a social outing. Your wives and your husbands become friends. It becomes like a coffee club, a book club, and the growth stops. And what happens almost every single time that I've seen is that you're embarrassed. You don't want to hurt the other person's feelings. You don't want to hurt the group's feelings. Your kids now play Little League together. It's hard for you to say, I can't go forward anymore because the growth process is stopped. So what happens is you stay there. You stop growing. The group becomes a social outing as opposed to a method to grow your dream, your career, your business. Now, those are the 7 things that have to be present for a mastermind group to work. Again, I didn't make them work. It was my experience that when I got into a mastermind group, the 2 or 3 times I tried it, it was like a human vacuum cleaner where my brains were being sucked out into the atmosphere. But you can make them work if you follow these 7 steps. Okay, we've got mastermind group out of the way, so to speak, and now I want to talk about mentoring. Now, I've already mentioned earlier in this tape that Costa Gatzos, Jim Newman, and Jerry Ormond were my mentors. 2 of those gentlemen are still alive. Jim Newman, who's semi-retired in Studio City, California. He's in the book. He is the founder of the PACE organization, which stands for Personal and Company Effectiveness. Jim's still a good friend. I had lunch with him, 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I still bounce ideas off of him. He was my mentor for getting my head screwed on straight. Now I'm going to talk about how I got him. Now, as some of you already realized, about 20 or so years ago, I decided that I wasn't where I wanted to be. In fact, I wasn't even a fraction, had not accomplished a fraction of what I wanted to accomplish by the time I was 40 or 50. So I started looking into seminars, seminar presenters, and I came across a gentleman named Dr. Dennis Waitley in The Psychology of Winning. I like what Dennis said, and I still like a lot of what he says, but I wanted to know where he learned his trade, so to speak. And he said that his mentor was a guy named Jim Newman, who I'd never heard of at the time. So I found out where Mr. Newman's offices were. I called him. I tried to schedule an appointment. He was very busy, but I found out when his first seminar was. His first seminar was a place called Palo Mesa, California, and I attended that seminar sometime in the spring of 1976, almost 20 years ago. This is November 1995 as I make this tape. And I went to see Jim, and I was very much taken back, or very much excited, I should say, with what he had to say, because what he really helped me determine in my own life was that my definition for success and my expectations weren't high enough. Even though I was successfully making a lot of money on Wall Street, it wasn't where I wanted to be. So I took the time, and from that point forward, and for the last almost 20 years, I have continued to see him, continued to call him, continued to buy him lunch, continue to go to his seminars, and continue to see him whenever I can. Now, one of the first things to remember when you're looking for these mentors is that mentors, we want to make it easy for them to want to do business with us. We want to make it easy for them to want to give us advice. You have to have something in common with your mentor other than just you sucking his brains. It may be golf, it may be tennis, it may be gourmet eating, it may be traveling, but it's got to be something different. And when you're doing these whatever activities that you choose with these various mentors, you want to make it easy. Guys like that are always picking up the check. So you want to pick up the check if you take them to lunch, you take them to breakfast, you take them to dinner. You want to make it as palatable as humanly possible for them to want to do business with you and to advise you. Jim Newman has always been there when I needed him, no matter what. Called him at the last minute, and you will find super successful people, for the most part, are that way. Not all of them, but most of them. Now, I met Costa Gatzos in a slightly different way. I was already had left Wall Street, and it was in the late 70s, and we were doing business with Onassis Shipping Lines. Costa Gatzos was the CEO of Onassis Shipping Lines after Aristotle Onassis passed away. He was the right-hand man for Aristotle Onassis for over 60 years. When Mr. Onassis passed away, Mr. Gatzos was named the executor, or the head of the Christine Onassis Trust, which was Mr. Onassis' daughter. I was at Olympic Towers doing business, and that's their office headquarters in Manhattan. And I had heard, the legendary tales about Mr. Gatzos, so I decided, since I was doing a small bit of business with Onassis Shipping Lines, that I would be introduced to Mr. Gatzos as a caveat for doing business. I was introduced to Mr. Gatzos. He liked me. I offered to, next time I was in town, to buy him lunch. He said, well, sure, as many successful people, sure, kid, give me a call when you're in town next. But I made it a point that every time that I was going east of the Mississippi, I went through New York City. Every time that I was anywhere, if I was going to go to Washington, D.C., I went to New York City. And I spent a lot of time, and ultimately, Mr. Gatzos took me under his wing. And actually, he and I became partners in business. And he introduced me to a lot of the world figures that I've met doing business with the Vatican, to name one, was through Mr. Gatzos. But he was a man that was, as Mr. Buss in my earlier example with the Lakers, he was a person that was ostensibly very tough to get through to. But I persevered. I did it in a professional way. Mr. Gatzos liked fine eating establishments, and so we used to spend time with lunch and dinner at places in Manhattan like the Grand Wee, 21, the Coq Basque, and at my expense, not at Mr. Gatzos' expense. And I benefited greatly. My third mentor, who's also still living, Jerry Orman, who lives here in Bel Air, California. He's retired. He's the chairman and co-founder of Orman Industries, which is a big conglomerate in the 60s and 70s. I met on a slightly different basis. We were trying to do business in the oil patch in West Texas, and we came across the Orman Industries, and I knew from reputation that he had been a very successful wildcatter back in the 40s and 50s, and I made it my business to call him up, go to visit him in Dallas, and spend time with him. And just as I went out of my way to go see Mr. Gatzos, I went out of my way to go see Mr. Orman. Mr. Orman and I are still good friends. His wife Dottie and my wife have spent a lot of time together. He was just recently at my 50th birthday at my home a few weeks ago. But all these individuals are accessible if you persevere, if you're polite, if you're professional, and if you give them a reason to want to see you again. Now, there are 4 characteristics that are mandatory, in my judgment, for picking a mentor. And I'm going to go through them in a little bit of detail right now. Number 1, this mentor, candidate to be your mentor, has to significantly be more successful than you are now. And I mean significantly. For example, if you're making $50,000 a year now, I mean, your mentor isn't making $150,000 a year now. Your mentor is making perhaps millions of dollars per year now. He is where you want to be in your dreams. He is the knight on a shiny knight on a white horse. He is your dream. He is your Camelot, so to speak. If you settle for any less than that, number 1, there's not enough stretch. There's not enough quantum leap between where you are and where you want to be. You will find these people, as I alluded to at the beginning of the tape, almost everywhere. The newspapers, TV, and radio. Number 2, this person, almost by definition, is senior to you, but the senior person you really like and respect. In other words, if you don't really like this guy or this gal, your mentor relationship won't last. You want him to be vastly more experienced than you, but you also want accessibility that is desirable. Now, Mr. Orman was accessible to me. Mr. Newman was accessible to me. Mr. Gatzos wasn't accessible to me. But normally speaking, you want accessibility. You want to be able to call him up and say, hey, what are you doing for lunch next Friday? How about golf a week from Tuesday? How about dinner? How about we have lunch or dinner with you and your wife? You want that kind of accessibility. It's desirable, but it's not absolutely mandatory, because in 2 of the 3 mentors that I had the accessibility, and the one with Mr. Guthrie I didn't. Number 3 for points that you have to accomplish or had accomplished when picking a mentor is that the same field of endeavor is most desirable but not mandatory. In other words, if you're a lawyer, you should look for a mentor that's a lawyer. If you're in manufacturing, you should look for a mentor that's in manufacturing. It's most desirable, but it's not mandatory. I used the example, I had a get my head screwed on straight mentor, I had a general business mentor, and I had a energy business mentor. But all things being equal, your mentor should be in the same field of endeavor, or perhaps an ancillary bit of your field of endeavor. And number 4, extremely important, and I've already alluded to it, you have to have something else in common outside business. If you don't have something else in common outside business, your relationship will wane and ultimately wither away and die. You have to have a reason to see each other. Over the years, fine dining and golf have been my 2 primary reasons for getting together. And for the people that I'm a mentor for, and we're going to talk a little bit about that later on the tape, I mean, the people that I mentor for are basically around golf, around eating, going out to eat, around things that are more relaxing for me. What you don't want to do with a mentor relationship is to make it a non-relaxing time. You don't want it to bring anxiety. You don't want it to bring any apprehension. You want him to enjoy seeing you. You want him to look forward to seeing you. Now, you want to be able to draw on his experience. You know, one of the Peñaisms that I use in the seminar is you won't always have all the answers. Take seriously the advice of others whom you respect greatly. Well, I can even go further is to say that I virtually don't take any advice from anybody I don't respect, period. Whereas most of us take the advice from people that haven't been there, haven't done that. It's important to remember, when you're looking for a mentor in the newspaper or you see somebody on TV, just close your eyes and say, has he been there? Has he done that? It's important to remember, when you're looking for a mentor in the newspaper or you see somebody on TV, just close your eyes and say, has he been there? Has he done that? I mean, if he hasn't, it's extremely easy for you to qualify whether you're going to want to go after that person as a mentor. You know, a gentleman named Scott Olson, who was the founder of a company called Rollerblade, and he's been quoted as saying, nothing on the earth prepares you to run a company that goes from 0 to $100 million. Well, that's true, but the only thing that can help you in preparation is somebody that's already run a company that makes or generates $100 million in revenue, or somebody that has started a company from 0 and now generates $100 million in revenue. The benefit that I have for the people that I'm the mentor to, the 8 or 10 in the United States and in Europe, is the fact that I've built a company from 0 to over $400 million in value, with thousands of employees, in dealing with all the nuances of business. It's important to relate your mentors to your dream team, because what we're going to talk about now, or I'm going to talk about, I should say, is building your dream team that you will leverage off of your mentors. Now, your mentors may or may not be on your board of directors, and you've all heard me say, for those of you that have heard me speak, I should say, that you should run your company as if it were going to be a public company, even when it's not a public company. Audited financials, quality lawyers, quality accountants, etc. So your mentors may or may not be on your boards of directors, on your board, I should say. Now, your dream team normally will start with your legal professional and your accounting professional. And where do you find such people? Well, I'm a proponent that from the accounting point of view, you should use Big 6 accounting firms. It used to be Big 8 when I first started, but Big 6, or at the very least, large regional firms. Now, why do you want to use large regional firms or Big 6 accounting firms? They're more expensive, Dan. I can hear you saying it right now. The difference between an audit from a small regional mom-and-pop CPA, you may be able to get an audit done for a small company for $5,000 or $8,000, and to have audited financial numbers from a Big 6, it's going to be $20,000, $30,000 minimum. So why do you want that? Well, first of all, you have instant credibility. You have the instant credibility. For example, I've used Coopers & Lybrand for almost 20 years. I can go almost any place in the world, and I can be introduced to banks, lawyers, accountants in South America, in Asia, in Australia, in Europe, and I've used Coopers & Lybrand like that. Number two, not just the worldwide contacts, but the credibility that when you go to a financial institution with audited numbers from Coopers & Lybrand as opposed to audited numbers from your brother-in-law, Joe Jones and Company, there's no comparison. I will not look at audited numbers. Well, I won't look at numbers unless they're audited, and I won't look at audited numbers unless they're from a respected, fairly large accounting firm, a regional firm, or a Big 6. Another reason you want to use a Big 6 or a large regional firm is if they do make a mistake, God forbid, and you borrow money from a financial institution and the numbers are wrong, you have somebody to go back and there's recourse. You can't go back and ask for your money back or sue Joe Jones and Company with four accountants. You can go back if Price Waterhouse, Coopers & Lybrand, Deloitte Touche make a mistake. So you want somebody to be accountable to you, because I assure you the financial institution or the partnership or whoever you've used to raise money or to illustrate how your business is doing will come back and be looking for recourse for you, so you want to be able to go for recourse for somebody else. Now, you also want the same kind of credibility for a law firm. Now, I use the bigger law firms in the United States and in Europe and wherever I go for the same reason. I have connections worldwide because of that law firm. I'm able to interface at a very high level. I can be introduced to no matter almost whatever industry that I'm looking at, I can be introduced at a very, very high level. You also want to have recourse. If, God forbid, there is a legal opinion that's wrong and your partners or the bank or whoever comes back and looks to you, you want somebody to be able to look to. So there's recourse and accountability all up and down the line. This is where I started, and as many of you know, when I started Great Western Resources, I gave my lawyer 10% of the company, and I gave my accountant 10% of the company. They were partners, respectively, in their large accounting firm and their large law firm. That's the beginning of your dream team. And you want people in the large accounting firm and in the large law firm that are hungry for business. You want to give them all the legitimate business you can, but you want them to be your lawyer. You want them to be your accountant. If you're dealing with a small law firm, you are eventually going to outgrow them. If you're dealing with a small accounting firm, you're eventually going to outgrow them. You want a firm, and you want your member of your dream team that's a member of that firm to be able to take you to the next level, the next 2 or 3 levels. Coopers & Lybrand was able to take me to several levels from the beginning when I first founded the firm. The various law firms that I've used over the years have been able to take me to several levels. You want that same capability. You don't want to have to be changing law firms or changing accounting firms as you grow. Additional members of your dream team are your bankers or financial institutions. And by financial institutions, most of us think of banks, but it could be other than banks. It could be savings and loans. It could be pension funds. Whoever you're helping, or is helping you, I should say, finance your project. This dream team you also includes key employees. Key employees and your board members should have been given equity in your company, equity in your dream, a piece of the rock, so to speak, part ownership, to instill that same obsession that you have or had when you started the business and you still have now. So you want all of it to be infectious. You want them to think the same way you do. part of the idea when I look to who I'm going to bring on my dream team or make them a part of my dream team, I say to myself, am I hiring credentials or am I hiring attitude? I'm a proponent of hiring attitude. In my early days in my career, I was a proponent of hiring credentials. Now I realize that the reason why Procter & Gamble and Scott Paper were two of the companies that Carnation and Scott Paper are two of the companies that I interviewed with when I first got out of school, didn't hire me, is because, I'm not the kind of person that a big Fortune 500 or Fortune 50 company would hire. I use the example many times in my seminars that Herb Kelleher, the founder of Southwest Air, Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple, Bill Paley, one of the founders of CBS, Tom Edison, Michael Milken, Walter Wriston, Samuel Goldwyn, Henry Ford, Ted Turner, Richard Branson, Bill Gates, Freddie Laker, Warren Buffett, Rupert Murdoch, Tom Watson Sr., and Alexander Graham Bell were all mad as hatters. They were all nuts. They were all crazy guys that would have found it difficult to get hired any place. And they all went out and basically started their own business. But the question I think upon when I'm looking to bring somebody on my team, I said, like the Mad Hatters I just described, would I have hired them? Would you have hired them? People listening to this tape? Most people listening to this tape probably wouldn't have hired them. But more importantly, would they have come to work for me? Would they have come to work for you? Machiavelli said many, many years ago that a ruler is judged by the people he surrounds himself with. Your dream team should be reflective of the kind of person that you are. You want to be judged by how good the people that represent you. So think about it. Would you hire them, and would they come to work for me or come to work for you? It's extremely important. In building your dream team, they're going to look to you for leadership. And leadership is action, not position. So you'll have to act as if you are the head of a dream team. Many of you have heard me talk about being comfortable versus being ready. You're never ready to head up a dream team or an important board of directors, but are you comfortable? Well, the more you hang around with high-performance people, the more that you hang around with people that have been there and done that, the more that you hang around with your mentors, the longer that you have personal relations vis-a-vis business with your dream team, the more you are going to feel comfortable with it. You want your dream team to have an appetite for an adventure. You don't want them to be staid individuals that are people that are used to 9 to 5 or 8 to 5. You want these people, as you've heard me say, to dream big and dare to fail. One of the examples that I use when I bring people on any of my boards or any of my dream teams of the various organizations I'm affiliated with is I use 2 examples, one of which is Mr. Bill Gates, who recently was interviewed, and he related his policy for honoring failure, mistakes. He actually gives bonuses for mistakes because he wants people to think outside the box. He wants people to think in a macro sense as opposed to a micro sense. You want your people on your dream team, you want people on your board to think that way. And the second example that I use in relationship to thinking outside the box as you want your dream team to is Ted Turner. A couple years ago I heard him, he was on the dais at the Harvard Club when I was, and I heard him say, my father left me 2 things when he died 30 plus years ago. One, he left me a couple $1 million, which is a great start, but he left me something made me much richer, and it was the idea that he said, Ted Sr. speaking to Ted Jr., he says, Ted, I want you to think in terms of setting goals that you cannot accomplish in your lifetime. Cannot, ladies and gentlemen. And that's the kind of thought process you want with your dream team. That's the kind of mental process that your mentors should leave you with. If that's not the kind of process that you're left with, then obviously you're not looking at the right mentors and you're not looking at the right kinds of people for your dream team. It's not difficult to create a dream team. It just isn't. It's easier than you think. It will become easier as you do it. remember that most great leaders began in the capacity of followers. They became great leaders because they were intelligent followers. Now, in closing, I want to give a couple of examples of people that have attended our seminars and that are in the process, as we speak, of building dream teams. And well, I happen to be their mentors, rightly or wrongly. Now, let me start with Bruce Whipple, who's a partner of mine. He's the CEO and founder of a company called Property Tax Consultants, Inc. It's based in New York. We have clients, Fortune 500 clients. We're in the auditing business. We audit utility bills, phone bills. In fact, one of our clients, ironically enough, is we audit the phone bills of AT&T. Bruce, in addition to myself, I'm his mentor. He asked me to be his mentor. He was persevering. At first I said no. And when I came on his board as chairman, then we set about building, or me assisting him in building his dream team. He next went to a gentleman that was a 38-year veteran from the board of directors of IBM, approached him with the idea of being on our board, approached him with the idea of being part of the dream team, gave him a small piece of the equity in the company, and he was, in a very professional way, said, as long as I feel I can contribute, I'd like to help. I think that I still have a benefit. He then went to a former member of the board of one of the largest energy companies in the United States. He was able to bring him on the board with the same small bit of equity and in the same thought process. As long as he could contribute, he wanted to be part of the board. We then hired O'Melveny & Myers, who have been my lawyers for the better part of 20 years, to be our legal representation and part of our dream team. We are in the process of making our first acquisition in Dallas, Texas. Part of the reason this was a company that was not for sale, and yet we were able to open the door because we showed him our board, our dream team, our representation. O'Melveny & Myers was able to tell the principal in Dallas, Texas, that these guys can perform, and we're off and running to make an acquisition that's probably, depending on how you want to measure it, between 8 and 12 times larger than this. Now, this is a guy, Bruce Whipple, who didn't know what a dream team was 2 years ago, didn't understand all the ramifications of getting people like Coopers & Lybrand or O'Melveny & Myers to represent him. Another gentleman is Mr. Lenny Nock, who's also an alumni of a few of the great Quantum Leap seminars. He is a pilot for U.S. Air. He's in his early 40s. By the way, Mr. Whipple is also in his early 40s. These are young guys. Here's a man that is going to stop flying here in the not-too-distant future, that has put together a dream team of Coopers & Lybrand, top-notch investment banking firms, top-notch lawyers, and he doesn't even have a company yet. He has gone through the interviewing process. When you're looking for these accountants, when you're looking for these lawyers, you go through an interviewing process. You want to make appointments with a half a dozen accounting firms, a half a dozen law firms, a half a dozen engineering firms, depending on the endeavor that you're in. Lenny has put together a formidable dream team. In fact, I've said it in a public forum at least once. Lenny Nock is better prepared to build a large company than I was when I got started, and I started on Wall Street. He has done it right. He has put the dream team together first, and he's going to find the company second. Another gentleman that has done a remarkable job, considering his experiences, business acumen, and business-wise, I should say, is next to nothing, is a guy named Mike Roth, who's one of the better copywriters and marketing guys in the country, and that's how I met him. But he is in the process of putting together a dream team to make not just one corporate acquisition. He is trying to take over a niche market of a whole industry, and he has put together financing. He's put together a board. He's put together and interviewed venture capitalists, potential board members that have agreed to come on, making the phone calls just like Fidel Vargas did going out and interviewing banks, going out and interviewing former presidents of large corporations in the Phoenix area where he lives, and actually getting it done. The dream team process, the mentor process, is really a lot less difficult than it sounds. The overcoming the fear of making the phone calls, and you've heard me say fear is false expectations appearing real, sometimes can be formidable. But once it's done, once the mindset is in place, it's really an easy task to find people to be your mentor, to find people to actually be part of your dream team. And when you sell this dream team idea, remember what I said at the beginning of the tape. I've never seen a high-performance person that didn't do it full-time, and I never saw a high-performance person that wasn't super enthusiastic. So if you get out there with enthusiasm and you sell these people on your passion, your dream for the future, and how everybody involved with the process is going to make a lot of money, you won't have any trouble. Until the next audio version of the Quantum Leap Advantage newsletter, good luck and good hunting into your Quantum Leap Advantage.